Emma and Jacob Turner appeared to be devoted foster parents, trusted by the system and respected in their quiet suburban neighborhood. But behind the perfectly trimmed hedges and welcoming facade, a dark secret festered for years. Children who were meant to find safety in their home instead lived in terror, chained to furniture, trapped in hidden rooms, and silenced by fear. What officers discovered during a routine welfare check would shock everyone. Bodycam footage revealing a calculated nightmare that no inspection, no report, and no neighbor could have uncovered. The Turners' house, once considered a haven, became the center of a horrifying investigation, exposing a reality so chilling it seemed impossible to believe. The call came in just before night, fully settled over the neighborhood, flagged as a routine welfare check with no history of violence or prior complaints. Officers were told the address belonged to a licensed foster home that had passed inspections for years. On paper, everything appeared normal. The street was quiet, lined with identical houses and parked cars, the kind of place where nothing unusual ever seemed to happen. As the patrol vehicle slowed and stopped, the Bodycam activated automatically, capturing the calm exterior that gave no warning of what lay ahead. The front yard was carefully maintained, with trimmed grass and a porch light left on, casting a soft glow over the entrance. There were no sounds coming from inside the house, no movement visible through the windows. This silence felt strange for a home that was supposed to hold multiple children. As officers approached the door, the stillness only grew heavier. Even the air seemed thick, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Once inside, the first impression was order. Furniture was neatly arranged, surfaces were spotless, and the smell of cleaning chemicals lingered in every room. Yet something about the atmosphere felt wrong. The house lacked warmth. There were no personal touches, no signs of play or daily life. Each step down the hallway echoed louder than expected, and the absence of noise became unsettling rather than comforting. The Bodycam recorded small details that slowly raised concern. Doors were closed tightly, some with locks positioned unusually high. Light fixtures were dim, casting long shadows that stretched across the walls. A faint metallic scent mixed with the chemical smell, sharp and unpleasant. The home felt controlled, as if every inch had been carefully planned. What was meant to be a brief check quickly began to feel like an intrusion into something deliberately hidden. The officers sensed that this visit would not end the way it began, and that the quiet. As the officers moved farther inside, the layout of the house began to feel intentionally confusing. Hallways narrowed unexpectedly, forcing slow movement, while doors appeared where walls should have been. The Bodycam captured the methodical sweep from room to room, each space cleaner than the last, yet stripped of any comfort. The rooms felt unused, almost staged, as though they existed only to be inspected and not lived in. Several doors were secured with heavy-duty locks that were out of place for a family home. Some locks were mounted on the outside, controlling entry rather than privacy. The windows were covered with thick curtains that blocked natural light, even though it was still early evening outside. When officers pulled one aside, they noticed additional barriers fixed behind the glass, preventing anyone from opening it. The house was sealed off from the outside world by design. The floor told its own story. Deep scuff marks ran along certain paths, forming patterns that suggested repeated movement under restriction. In corners, the paint was worn down to bare wood, as if something had been dragged back and forth over long periods of time. The Bodycam zoomed in on these details, capturing evidence that could not be explained by normal household wear. The smell grew stronger as the search continued. Rust, moisture, and something organic lingered in the air, especially near a closed door at the end of the hallway. Ventilation was poor, and the house felt unnaturally warm despite the cool night outside. It became clear that air circulation was being limited on purpose. What disturbed the officers most was the absence of sound. No footsteps, no voices, not even the hum of electronics. For a place meant to shelter children, the silence felt unnatural and deeply unsettling. Each step forward revealed that the house was not just hiding something, but actively designed to keep it hidden. The first clear signs of suffering appeared in a small room tucked away from the main living area. The space was bare, holding only thin mattresses laid directly on the floor. They were stained and uneven, suggesting long-term use without care or replacement. The body cam captured the tightness of the room, where there was barely enough space to stand without brushing against the walls. There were no pillows, no blankets, and no sense that this room was meant for rest. Along one wall, heavy chains were secured to large pieces of furniture. Their placement showed they were not decorative or accidental. The metal was worn smooth in places, as if it had been handled repeatedly. Nearby, marks were etched into the wall at different heights, indicating more than one child had been confined there over time. The officers paused as the realization settled in that these restraints were part of daily life inside the home. In another area, officers found plastic containers used for food and water placed directly on the floor. There was no table, no chairs, and no attempt at dignity. The containers were scratched and cracked, showing heavy use. The body cam recorded the lack of basic necessities that children require, replaced instead with tools meant to control behavior. The temperature in these rooms was noticeably different from the rest of the house. The air was stale and damp, making it difficult to breathe comfortably. There were no vents, no fans, and no windows. The design seemed intentional, meant to isolate and weaken anyone kept inside for long periods. What stood out most was what was missing. There were no toys, no drawings, no signs of learning or play. Childhood had been erased from these spaces. The evidence pointed to a pattern of quiet, ongoing cruelty that relied on silence and fear to survive. At the far end of the hallway, officers noticed a section of wall that did not match the rest of the house. The paint tone was slightly off, and the baseboard sat higher than it should have. The body cam recorded a careful inspection as pressure was applied, revealing that the wall shifted inward. Behind it was a narrow opening that had been deliberately concealed, hidden from casual view and routine inspections. Once opened, the space beyond was almost completely dark. The room was small and windowless, with low ceilings that made it difficult to stand upright. The air inside was thick and stale, carrying the smell of rust and moisture that had been growing stronger throughout the house. When light finally filled the room, its purpose became horrifyingly clear. This was not storage. It was confinement. Restraints were fixed directly into the walls and floor, positioned in ways that allowed little movement. The metal showed signs of long-term use, worn down and discolored. Feeding containers were bolted low, forcing anyone inside to eat from the ground. The body cam captured deep gouges in the walls, uneven and frantic, suggesting repeated attempts to escape or signal for help. The room absorbed sound almost completely. Even movement inside felt muted, as though noise had been intentionally suppressed. The lack of ventilation made breathing difficult after only a few moments, raising immediate concerns about how long someone could survive there without serious harm. What disturbed officers most was how carefully the room had been hidden. It required planning, construction, and effort. This was not an impulsive act of neglect, but a deliberate system designed to isolate and punish without detection. The discovery marked a turning point in the investigation, confirming that the home was built around cruelty, not care, and that its darkest purpose had been buried behind a wall meant to erase evidence. As investigators continued documenting the home, a clear pattern began to emerge. Every room, every lock, and every barrier served a specific purpose. This was not random abuse, but an organized system built around control. The layout of the house separated living spaces in a way that prevented anyone inside from seeing or helping one another. Movement was limited to narrow paths, making supervision constant and escape nearly impossible. Records found inside the home revealed strict routines enforced through fear. Meals were measured and timed, sleep was restricted, and isolation was used as punishment. The absence of clocks and calendars ensured that time lost meaning, keeping those inside disoriented and dependent. The body cam footage captured notebooks filled with checklists and rules, showing that control was maintained through structure rather than chaos. The foster guardians understood how to avoid suspicion. Rooms visible during inspections were kept spotless and welcoming, while hidden spaces remained sealed. Reports were carefully prepared, filled with positive language and compliance notes. Any signs of distress were explained away as behavioral issues common in foster children. Over time, these explanations became accepted without question. Children were intentionally kept apart. Separation reduced the chance of shared memories or coordinated attempts to seek help. Fear was reinforced through unpredictability, with punishments applied inconsistently to keep obedience high. Silence was the most powerful tool of all. Without communication, resistance faded. What made the system especially disturbing was how normal it appeared from the outside. Neighbors saw a quiet household. Officials saw paperwork in order. The cruelty survived because it blended into routine. By the time officers stood inside, documenting the truth, it was clear this system had been refined over years, operating in plain sight while remaining completely unseen. The Bodycam footage transformed the investigation from suspicion into undeniable fact. Every movement through the house was recorded in real time, preserving details that could never be recreated later. The camera captured the locked doors, the hidden spaces, and the conditions that word alone could not fully explain. What might have been dismissed as exaggeration or misunderstanding was now frozen on video, clear and unfiltered. Investigators reviewed the footage repeatedly, slowing it down to study each frame. The angle of the locks, the placement of restraints, and the wear on the walls told a story of long-term use. The camera documented how the house functioned as a closed system, designed to hide suffering behind clean surfaces and official approval. No single image stood alone. Together, they formed a complete and disturbing record. The footage also revealed how easily the abuse could have been missed without visual proof. Written reports would never have conveyed the narrowness of the rooms or the oppressive lack of air. Photographs taken later could not capture the moment of discovery or the shock visible in the careful movements of those documenting the scene. The Bodycam showed the truth as it unfolded, without preparation or performance. Once secured, the video became central to the case. Prosecutors relied on it to establish intent, planning, and duration. The footage demonstrated that the conditions were not temporary or accidental, but built into the structure of the home itself. Each clip reinforced the same conclusion. This environment was created to control and harm. When portions of the footage were later released, it changed public perception instantly. Viewers did not need explanations. The images spoke for themselves, exposing a reality that could no longer be denied or hidden behind paperwork and silence. Once the full scope of the situation was confirmed, the home was secured and treated as an active crime scene. Investigators moved carefully, documenting every room before anything was disturbed. Outside, the quiet street filled with emergency vehicles, drawing attention from neighbors who had never suspected what was happening behind the walls. The contrast between the calm neighborhood and the severity of the case only deepened the shock. The foster guardians were taken into custody as evidence continued to be collected. The Bodycam footage supported immediate action, leaving little room for denial. Medical teams arrived to assess the children, who were removed from the home and transported to safe locations. Their physical condition revealed long-term neglect, reinforcing what the environment had already shown. Care teams began treatment, while authorities focused on ensuring the children would not be lost within the system again. As the investigation expanded, officials uncovered failures beyond the home itself. Inspection reports were reviewed and compared with the reality captured on video. Patterns of missed warning signs became clear, including repeated approvals based on surface-level checks. Oversight agencies faced urgent questions about how such conditions were allowed to continue unchecked for so long. News of the case spread rapidly once arrests were made. Public reaction was immediate and intense, driven by the released footage and official statements. Advocacy groups demanded reform, and emergency reviews of other foster homes were launched. What had begun as a single welfare check was now triggering a wider examination of child protection policies. The case marked a turning point. It exposed not only individual cruelty, but also systemic weaknesses that had failed the most vulnerable. As court proceedings began, the focus shifted toward accountability. The foster home was eventually sealed and condemned, but shadow lingered long after the arrests. Every detail of the investigation, from the Bodycam footage to the hidden rooms and chains, became part of a public record that could not be ignored. The case forced law enforcement, child welfare agencies, and the community to confront uncomfortable truths about oversight, responsibility, and the ways abuse can hide in plain sight. The silence that had once protected cruelty was now shattered. The Bodycam, which had initially served as a routine documentation tool, became a symbol of accountability. Its footage allowed investigators to see and prove what had been nearly invisible. It exposed not only the actions of the foster guardians, but also the blind spots in the system that had allowed the abuse to continue. The video showed what words alone could not: the calculated design of the home, the isolation, the chains, and the fear imposed on vulnerable children. It became clear that transparency was not just a procedural goal, but a matter of life and safety. The children removed from the home began to recover slowly under medical supervision and psychological care. Their stories, though painful, helped shape new protocols in foster care oversight. Policymakers and agencies reviewed inspection procedures, training, and reporting requirements, trying to ensure that no child would again be trapped in a similar nightmare. The case highlighted how quickly fear can take hold when structures of care fail, and how essential vigilance is at every level. For the public, the story resonated beyond the headlines. It revealed the dangers hidden behind ordinary appearances, reminding everyone that cruelty does not always announce itself. The foster home had thrived in secrecy, but once exposed, the truth could no longer be contained. Fear lost its power when brought into the light, and the case stood as a stark warning.